Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into Santa Barbara Nutrients YouTube channel. Today we have Shelby Anderson, who is tuning in from sunny Florida. So super excited about that right now. I'm in Chicago and it's snowing, a little bit different. So Shelby is a registered dietitian with the practice Plant Powered Kidneys. And Plant Powered Kidneys specializes in helping kidney warriors with CKD stages 1 through 5. We will have their website posted below this video as well, so I encourage everybody to take a look at that later. And prior to working exclusively with kidney patients, Shelby worked as a cardiac rehab dietitian. So she really enjoys talking about heart health as well. And today, Shelby is going to be leading our discussion on fiber and kidney disease. And with that, we'll go ahead and start off with the question, what is fiber?
Thanks so much. That is a great question. So fiber is actually a type of carbohydrate, and it's a type of carbohydrate that your body can't digest. So most of the time, your body takes carbohydrates and breaks them down into sugar molecules that we can use for energy. However, fiber can't be broken down into those sugar molecules. So instead, it passes through undigested. So that's what's a little bit unique about fiber. So fiber helps us regulate our body's use of sugars. It helps with heart health, with our gut health. It helps keep hunger in check. So um, there's a lot of different roles that fiber can play. Um, but that's just kind of the overview of it.
Great, great. And when we think of fiber, we kind of think about there's two different types. So soluble versus insoluble. Would you be able to kind of go over those, explain the differences between them as well?
Definitely, yes. So there are two different types of fiber. That's correct. And I want to point out that one is not better than the other. So both of them just have two different roles, and they're both important to include. So soluble fiber is a fiber that dissolves in water. So as it moves through our system, it creates like a gel-like formation, and this is the type of fiber that can really help, like lower blood cholesterol, lower blood sugars, things like that. And then we have insoluble fiber, and this type of fiber does not dissolve in water. So it really helps prevent constipation, and helps things kind of move through your digestive system. So again, both are going to be very, very beneficial to your health. We need both. One is not better than the other, but there's just two different types of fiber.
Okay, okay. That makes sense, kind of breaking it down
Mhm.
and understanding the differences between them. So
Right.
based on kind of like the daily recommendation of fiber, is this something that is in most foods people eat? Is it easy to meet that daily recommendation? How much fiber, I guess, do individuals typically consume on a daily basis?
That is a great question. So, unfortunately, most Americans don't get enough fiber. So we're typically aiming for, depending on, gender, a whole bunch of different things. We're aiming for between 25 to 35 grams of fiber in a day, and that can also be a number that is kind of calculated by your registered dietitian.
Mhm.
But most Americans are only getting about 15 grams in a day, so under what the recommendation is. So it is a very, very common nutrient. So it's found in a lot of different foods. Common sources are going to be things like whole grains, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes. Those are all going to be great sources of fiber. So it's found in a lot of things. It's just that most Americans don't necessarily get enough.
I see. So there's room for
Hmm.
improvement on that end.
Definitely, definitely.
Good. So I'll kind of
Yeah.
tie this back to, fiber and kidney disease. Um,
Hmm.
are there benefits for individuals who have kidney disease to maybe, look into and trying to increase their fiber intake?
Absolutely. So, yes, for kidney disease specifically, it can be very, very beneficial to increase the amount of fiber in your diet. When we think of a kidney friendly diet, we want to be thinking of like a high fiber diet. That's kind of what we want to associate a kidney friendly diet with, is a high fiber diet. And so, one of the reasons is, like I kind of mentioned before, Fiber can really help control blood sugars. So it can kind of help manage diabetes and blood sugar control, which in turn can be very, very beneficial to your kidneys. And then it can also help with that heart health aspect. So
Mhm.
it can help lower cholesterol. Um, it can help with blood pressure control, which again, in turn, can help with keeping your kidneys safe. So that's just one of the reasons why it would be beneficial for those with kidney disease. Another reason why it might be beneficial, fiber specifically would be beneficial for those with kidney disease, um, is one, it can support your gastrointestinal health or your GI
Mhm.
health. So with kidney disease, your kidneys are those filters that filter out a lot of those waste products. And so when your kidneys aren't working the way that they need to, you can't, filter out all those toxins. So they end up building up. And unfortunately, we're learning more and more about how that can negatively affect your gut microbiome, or the healthy gut,
Mhm.
everything in there
Right.
can be negatively affected when you have that buildup of toxins that your kidneys can't excrete.
Mhm.
So fiber can actually help, you know keep that gut microbiome healthy. So that's another reason why we would want to have
Mhm.
a healthy gut microbiome, and in turn, that can help, boost your immune system, can help with cardiac health, help with just a healthy digestive system in general. So that's another like kidney specific reason why we would
Mhm.
want to increase the amount of fiber. Um, one of the other one of the other points that I like to make with fiber as well, is that again, fiber helps keep you regular, so it helps keep bowel movements regular, which is very, very important, especially with those that are living with kidney disease, because it can also help get rid of excess toxins that way. So
Mm.
that's another reason why that would be beneficial.
And so, you did touch on the kind of the helping the GI health, the gut microbiota, and things like that. Now, I'm assuming that that is both soluble and insoluble that have those effects. Is that correct? Because we kind of talked about, they're both mutually beneficial. And do you find that one supports the GI health more than the other, or they both kind of act together?
So they're both going to be beneficial. Again, that insoluble fiber is the one that's going to make our stool basically formed, and then can help us have the more regular stools. The soluble fiber, though, is the one that has been a little bit more strongly linked to helping the healthy gut bacteria.
Hmm.
So soluble fiber, sources of soluble fiber are going to be things like oatmeal, nuts, beans, lentils, things like that. Um, and so that one in particular has been shown to be beneficial. Not that insoluble fiber isn't, but just soluble fiber a little bit more so.
Okay. And then if we're talking about, they're both mutually beneficial, how about if somebody, they start having, more and more fiber during the week? Are there adverse effects of that? Maybe GI pain in the very beginning? Or what can somebody kind of expect if they're really looking into this and saying, okay, great, I want to increase my dietary fiber to 25 grams per day or whatever that may be? Is there something they should look out for?
Definitely. So um, there are a couple things to look out for. I usually have I'll usually have people either look at, or I'll look at their current intake, and we'll calculate about how much fiber they're taking in regularly. So say an individual is averaging about 10 grams of fiber in a
Hmm.
day. That's really low. So if the next week you wanted to start taking in 25 grams of fiber, you might have some negative GI effects after
Okay.
that. You might experience some possibly bloating, some discomfort, possibly diarrhea, very,
Hmm.
very uncomfortable GI. Um, GI effects. So I actually have people add fiber slowly. So
Okay.
we'll go, we'll add fiber in increments of about, 5 grams a week,
Hmm.
and we'll just see how people do, symptom wise. So we'll make sure that we're monitoring GI symptoms as we continue to
Right.
increase fiber intake till we make that goal. And so if there are, negative effects, then we'll kind of take a step back, reassess, maybe take it a little bit slower, and then kind of go from there. Another thing that I'll do when we're talking about increasing the amount of fiber in somebody's diet is we'll make sure that they're staying hydrated. So again, we're talking about keeping everybody regular, uh, keeping you know bowel movements regular,
Right.
and all that kind of stuff. So we'll work on staying hydrated throughout the day as well. So we'll make sure that we'll calculate like an appropriate fluid amount and make sure that they're drinking enough water so that they don't get dehydrated when they're adding too much fiber. So that's something else that we'll look at
Okay.
too.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's good. And that's kind of probably plays a role too with the exercise, right? Getting up and getting your body so you can kind of get those bowel movements moving, especially if you're going to be consuming a bit more fiber during the day.
Exactly, exactly. There's a lot of benefits to adding more water in, as long as you don't have a fluid restriction or anything like that. Um, and so, adding more fiber and adding more water at the same time is just one of those
Right.
benefits too. So,
Right.
mhm,
Very cool.
mhm,
And so, tying this back again to kidney disease, because
mhm,
it sounds like there's so many benefits to actually increasing fiber intake. And I'm wondering, if somebody is following a kidney-friendly diet or maybe even doing a plant-focused ketogenic diet, and they're a little bit hesitant to kind of, take on some new foods or find foods that would maybe, work for that specific nutrition plan they're doing. What are some good sources, I guess, that you would recommend they start off with? And again, I know it's going to be very specific to that individual, what they're currently getting, and maybe what their nutrition plan is. But maybe just a few more types of ideas and foods that somebody can look into if they're, following a kidney-friendly diet or looking into a plant-focused ketogenic diet.
mhm. Great question. So I'll kind of talk about just the general kidney-friendly diet first, and then we can
Mhm.
kind of go into the more specifics of the ketogenic plant-based diet. So when we're talking about a kidney-friendly diet, a lot of times people think of what you would avoid. And so when we're working, when I'm working with an individual, we'll look at what actually, restrictions we have. So for example, potassium is something that a lot of people are very, very concerned about. It's a nutrient
Right.
that we look at very closely when we're looking at kidney disease. And so first we'll determine if a potassium restriction is appropriate or not.
Mhm.
And so if there's no restriction on things like that, or on like if there's no potassium restriction, um, then we'll go ahead and add in like as many fruits and vegetables as we can, and really
Right.
get a ton of fiber incorporated into the diet. Um, when we
Right.
have when we have more restrictions on there, then we'll kind of differentiate between which foods may be, say, lower potassium fruits and vegetables, but are still going to add fiber in there.
Mhm.
Um, or if we need to be a little bit more, say, careful with say protein, then we'll look at smaller amounts of nuts and seeds and beans and things like that, and maybe emphasize like the fruits and vegetables as a form of, or as a source of fiber first. So that might be an approach that we take to kind of fitting fiber into a more kidney friendly diet.
Okay.
When we go into the more specific plant-based ketogenic diet, um, it, carbohydrates are definitely very, very limited. That's what makes it
Mhm.
a ketogenic diet. Um, and since fiber is a type of carbohydrate, we do really just focus on the carbohydrates that that individual is getting
Mhm.
being high fiber carbohydrates.
I think that's important too, and I think Shelby did a
Hmm.
great job at highlighting that probably the first tip if somebody's interested in increasing their fiber intake is to meet with a registered dietitian, right? Because there's so many other things that they need to consider. So Shelby mentioned if somebody has to limit their potassium, right? What foods are going to be appropriate that have fiber in there, but can also meet what they're trying to do, right, for their macronutrient profile, or if somebody's on a specific nutrition plan already. And so, really meeting with a registered dietitian to kind of figure out where someone is and then how you can advance from there, I think is that best step. And then, Shelby mentioned again, taking it slow. Again, the dietitian is going to help somebody to kind of start really slow so they don't have adverse effects. And then adding more fluid as well too is very important. Are there other tips, Shelby, that you kind of just generally recommend to individuals who are looking to add more fiber into their diet who do have kidney disease?
Definitely. So there are a couple tips that I generally give out to increase the amount of fiber in your diet. One is always choose like whole fruits and vegetables. So avoiding things like fruit juices or like fruit and vegetable juice blends and things like that. And just going for like the whole fruit or the whole vegetable.
Hmm.
So that is where you're going to get a lot of fiber from. And then again, a ton of other nutrients too. So that's something that's really important. Another thing, if you are just following um, a more kidney friendly diet and you're including things like grains, choosing whole grains, those ones are going to have a ton more fiber. That whole grain is intact, and not only is it more fiber, but there's just more nutrients in there. So you're getting a more nutrient dense food item versus if you did something like white bread, white pasta, white rice, those types of things.
Right.
They've been stripped of a lot of their nutrients, so you're not getting quite as much bang for your buck, I guess.
Hmm.
So that's another tip. Again, choosing whole grains. If you're choosing things like cereal, whole grain cereals, when you look at the ingredients list, when you look and see if they have like if it mentions whole grain in there, that's another way to get some more fiber in there.
Hmm.
Um, Also, another thing that I like to mention is that when people are choosing snacks, make sure that your snack has a source of fiber in there too, because that's another way that you can really have fiber add up. So it doesn't just have to come from your meal, like your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They don't have to be the only sources of fiber. You can have a
Hmm.
snack, say, of um, peppers and carrots with hummus, and that would be a great high fiber snack. That would be really filling. You're getting a little bit more fiber in there, a ton of nutrients. So that would be another thing to kind of look at is where you can add fiber to your
Hmm.
snacks as well.
That's a great idea. And one thing that,
Hmm.
I kind of just thought of was how about the preparation of food, right? So if we're doing fruits and
Right.
vegetables and say we're cooking them down, what kind of effect does that have on the fiber content in that food?
That is a great question. So chopping some like will change the nutrient content of certain fruits and vegetables slightly. When you start to cook fruits and vegetables, that'll kind of alter some of the fiber content as well. And it'll get a little bit tricky with like different fruits and vegetables. But just know that it will kind of change the fiber content when you cook it versus when you eat it raw. So I'll actually have people have a balance of raw versus, cooked
Hmm.
vegetables. So if you're only eating cooked vegetables, then I'll kind of have them add in a few raw ones. If you're just having raw veggies, maybe we cook them every once in a while. Um, so we'll kind of have that balance there as well. But having raw vegetables as well is another great way to increase the amount of fiber in your diet.
Great, great. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
really helpful. And I think, one of my last questions again
Hmm.
is just what types of high fiber foods that are maybe lower in oxalates for those with kidney disease come to
Mm.
mind and are kind of, important to highlight that somebody might want to look into first.
Sure, absolutely. So that's a great question. So, with when we're talking about oxalates, I like to kind of have people make swaps for like higher oxalate values and then swap it out for like a lower oxalate
Mm.
value item. So for example, when we're talking about like the leafy greens, spinach might have a higher oxalate value, but you might swap it out with kale, and so you have a lower oxalate value item, but you're still adding some fiber in
Mm.
there. Um, so Um, for example, if you did something like almonds that might have a higher oxalate value, swapping it out for something like a nut with a lower oxalate value
Mhm.
that still has some fiber, that might be a good option too. So there are a couple other things that you could do. And I'm trying to remember off the top of my head at all the ones that have that are like low oxalate value and then still high fiber at the same time. But things like different like lettuces and things like that, those can be good options too. So you could do something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. So there are options out there basically. And I think it's first
Mhm.
starting with, where can I improve a little, each day and then weekly make
Mhm.
those changes for
Right.
long-term effects. Great,
Right.
great. This has
Mhm.
been, very informative, Shelby. I appreciate,
Mhm.
your knowledge and expertise on this subject. Is there
Mhm.
anything else that we might have missed during the conversation that you want to highlight or, add into it? I'm more than happy to take your kind of, opinions and feelings towards the fiber aspect.
Definitely, definitely, yeah. So again, most people aren't necessarily getting enough fiber. So wherever, like when you take a look at your diet, if there's small places that you can make, make a couple different changes to increase the amount of fiber in your diet, definitely go for it. So again, fruits, vegetables, whole grains versus like refined grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, all those types of things, those are going to be great sources of fiber. Um, there is, a point where you can get too much fiber. And so, when that happens, when you're experiencing GI discomfort, when you're having, irregular stools, things like that, then it might be, appropriate to reach out with to a registered
Mhm.
dietitian to see what the problem is and to see if you can get a more appropriate amount of fiber. So just know that there is that side as well.
Mhm.
Again, be sure to drink enough water as you increase your fiber intake. Um, and then continue to get a variety of different sources, so get a variety of soluble versus insoluble sources.
Yeah, those are wonderful tips. I think that's really helpful for
Mm,
somebody who's interested in this and really wants to kind of, be motivated and make these changes. We'll have more information posted below this video as well too for those that are interested. But
mhm.
again, Shelby, thank you very, very much for your time today. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
your knowledge and expertise on this subject.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys later, and thank you again for tuning in. Bye.